Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to another episode of Glass Half Full, a podcast and a safe platform where we talk with a variety of teachers, entrepreneurs, spiritualists, uplifters, givers, shakers, and serenaders. Everyone has a lesson to learn and a lesson to share. Let's use our life experiences to enrich someone's heart, mind, spirit, and soul. Through sharing our experiences, we can be a learning inspiration for one another. I'm your host, Chris Levens. Let's welcome today's guest. Today's guest is Bob DePasquale. Bob DePasquale, the generosity guy, is a certified financial planner, chartered advisor in philanthropy, and certified kingdom advisor. He's the founder of Initiate Impact Virtual Family Offices, a wealth management firm focused on generosity. And he loves to talk to organizations and families about the giving mindset. Everyone has gifts and skills to make the world a better place. Bob wants everyone to use their resources for just that. Let's give a warm welcome to Bob DePasquale. Good morning,
Hey,
good
Chris,
morning, good
how
morning.
are you?
I'm very well. Good morning to you. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It is morning here, and it's a beautiful day, so I'm pumped.
Yes. Well, I just want to thank you for taking some time out to be a guest here on Glass Half Full. We are so happy to have you. Thank you. Thank you. Can
You're
you tell
welcome.
everyone where you are in the world?
Yes, I am just west of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in the United States, so the southeastern part of our country here, where it's normally very warm and just a beautiful place to be. A lot of palm trees, lots of sun, and hopefully I'll get outside a little bit today and get some vitamin D.
Yes. And what time is it now?
It's 8 a.m. or 8:05.
Wow. Thank you.
What is it? What time is it by you now?
It is 10:05 p.m. on Friday
Nice.
evening.
Nice. Well, you asked me if I'm a morning person before, and I am. If it was 10:05, I'd probably be sleeping.
Oh my gosh. See, isn't it nice that people are just different in general?
Oh, it's great, man.
Right?
That's perfect. I love it. I love it. There's nothing wrong with staying up late. Don't get me wrong. I just, for whatever reason, my body clock doesn't work like that.
It's all good. Okay, we're going to jump right on in. I like to ask all of my guests this first question. I believe that our lives are in spiritual design. Can you share your life layout or blueprint with everyone? How you grew up, your family lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a deep one. So
Yes.
I was born in New York, which is about 3 hours plane flight, which ironically, Chris, I am flying to New York later today.
Get out of here.
So
Really?
yeah, dead serious. You asked that question at the perfect time. So when I was 3 years old, my parents moved from New York down to Florida.
Okay.
And they, my mom, speaking of weather, my mom wanted to get out of the cold weather, and my grandparents had moved down here, and my family kind of did it backwards. The grandparents moved down first, and then the kids followed. But outside of my dad's parents and my parents, and I'm an only child, I'm a spoiled brat. We're the only ones who moved to Florida. So my whole family's up in New York, and I lived in South Florida though for most of my life, and so I didn't get to know them very well. But I had a great, I loved growing up in South Florida, melting pot, the culture, grow up trying to speak Spanish as best as I could, hablo un poquito still. And
Okay.
it's been a great time, or it was a great time in my upbringing. Like I said, I was an only child. My parents poured into me very well. They were, we had a modest living. My parents met working in supermarkets up in New York. And when they moved down here, my dad took a job at a supermarket, and my mom worked in a bank most of the time, and as a customer service representative or a teller. And they taught me a lot. And as you heard about the title, I work in the financial industry, and ironically, my mom, like I said, she worked in a bank for many years, and I never wanted to work in the financial industry. But when we get to the later part of my story, it kind of came full circle. But Loved growing up down here playing sports outside. I mean, all day long. We didn't have internet when I was a young kid, so we had to be outside. And I loved it though. I loved it. That was my upbringing. Really appreciated that. And I thought, life was pretty darn good. I couldn't complain. Like I said, we had a modest living, but I was loved. I had friends everywhere. We always had food on the table. And life was good. But when I was 18, I went off to college, and I went back to New York for college. It's called my school is called Hofstra University. It's not too far from Manhattan. It's in Long Island, New York. And I went up there for a few different reasons. One, I like my parents, and most people would probably like to think I went up there for an education, and that was on the list. It probably wasn't the highest on the list, but I wanted to study at that level in college. And I also went up there because my family was there. And I knew that would be a pretty cool opportunity to be a little bit closer to all my cousins and my aunts and uncles and just get to know them a little bit better. And then I also had an opportunity to play sports at Hofstra, and primarily football. And that's my sport here. If you live over in the States, American football is king over here. And so I grew up playing it. And I went up there, and, you think you're invincible. I don't know about you, Chris, but when I was 18, I thought I was absolutely invincible. Like, nothing.
Don't we all?
Yeah, man. I mean, it was in a healthy, in somewhat of a healthy way. I don't want to, make it seem like I was arrogant, or, I thought that life was never ending. I was immortal, but I felt like a strong young person, mentally, physically, going out playing sports, had great opportunity, felt super blessed. You talk about spiritually designed. I felt like things were falling into place how they were supposed to. I felt like there was divine power in my life in a good way. And then in very, very short order, life changed. I had what I thought was a groin injury. Now, I don't know if your listeners or anyone out there has ever pulled a groin muscle before, but I didn't realize how much you actually use that muscle. You can't, if you hurt yourself, that you can't walk, you can't stand, you can't, turn around. Even sitting can be painful at times. And I was pretty quickly felt like, man, I went from having a couple, my first couple of days of training camp. I had just moved up there, and, and training camp is a month-long grind. And if you're a freshman, you're proving yourself to your coaches.
Of course.
But I felt like I all of a sudden, I felt life wasn't so great anymore, because my primary goal moving up there was getting botched. But anyway, I would do this rehab exercise, and I know this is an audio medium, but if anyone can picture a 3-wheeled stool, I'm sitting on this stool. I'm part of this rehab exercise every morning in the training room at like 6 a.m. I'm doing this. And back then I wasn't much of a morning person as much as I am now. So I had to get up early and do this stupid exercise. And I'm shimmying across this massive training room with like 100 people in it. College training room is much different than, say, a high school training room. And part of the exercise basically just to dodge the people. And it was painful and it was hard, and I wasn't getting any better. So one day, our head trainer, who he might have been 5'7", 5'6", 5'7", 130, 140 pounds, soaking wet, not a big guy, but he was very well respected by all of the 300-pound dudes that were on this team, right? And he had in order to address everyone in the training room, he would have to stand on this box. And one day he stood up there, and it was all of a sudden it got silent. The commotion that would typically be going on a training camp practice morning was crazy, but for some reason it got almost silent, or at least it felt like that. And he screams across the room, and he's like, "Bobby," they called me Bobby at the time, "stop being a weakling. You got to get back out on the field." And man, was that a hit to my ego in front of my, trainers and players, and probably a few coaches were walking around the training room at the time. And I said to Rick, I had an opportunity to speak to him a little bit later, and it was funny because you didn't really speak to Rick personally. Like, he was just busy running around making sure everyone was healthy and getting treatment. And in fact, some of my teammates were like, "Wait, you spoke with Rick by yourself?" Like, they knew something was like, nobody talks to this dude, but has a private appointment with Rick. And he told me, he's like, "Bobby, well, if you're not getting any better, I'm gonna send you to the doctor." So I was like, well, that finally, like, something's wrong, send me to the doctor. So I'm 18, technically an adult, but I had to drive around Long Island, New York, and New York City. Like I had to go to all these tests. I mean, every test in the book, Chris, you name it.
Hmm.
Sonograms, CAT scans, MRIs, you name it, everything, all these different tests. And I'm going to all these appointments by myself because
Whoa.
I'm, like I said, technically an adult driving around a new place. And these appointments would last for hours because, first of all, it took me an hour to fill out all the paperwork because I know nothing about medical insurance and healthcare and doctors and all that stuff. And I would sit there for, an hour and then wait. And then finally I would get in, and the test would take forever because they have to prep you. And some of them you need an IV and all this other stuff. So finally, I was supposed to be what I thought was my last test. And it was a Thursday. My parents were coming up. I had already scheduled this flight a long time ago to come up for my first ever college football game. Now, we knew I wasn't playing in the game at this point because of my injury. And they were flying up that day, and they expected me to be in another appointment for a couple hours. And I was like, well, I'll call you when I get out of the appointment. You probably will have landed by then, and maybe even back at my uncle's house, my mom's brother, where they were going to be staying. So he still lives in New York. And so I went into the appointment, and I expected to be there for a long time, like I said, but within less than 5 minutes, I was checked in and they brought me back into the office. I mean, I was totally surprised. And the doctor comes in less than a minute later. I mean, I expected to be waiting in the office, and he came in the room there, and he came right in. He sits down. He goes, "Bobby, you have cancer."
Whoa.
And I said, "What?" I mean, my jaw, Chris, hit I probably still have a scar on my jaw for how fast it hit the desk. I mean, I was like, "What?" And I was in shock, and he could tell. And he said, "Well, we're going to hook you up with an oncologist, and you're free to go." And I was like, well, I don't even know what an oncologist is. Like, what does that even mean?
Right.
I couldn't even spell that word probably at the time. And I walked out of there still in shock. I mean, silent. I don't even know if I said anything to him. I just walked out, and I kid you not, talk about timing. And I walked out of the office there. As soon as I got out of the building, the moment I walked out of the building, I mean, the timing couldn't have been any better. My phone rings, and it was my mom. And she goes, "Oh, hey, I didn't expect you to answer, but we landed and we're on our way back to your uncle's house. How'd the appointment go?" And I was like, "Well, about that appointment,
Oh my gosh.
I had to tell her what was up." I mean, and Chris, it was, I mean, it was dead silent on the phone. I mean, she was in shock when I told her, that I had cancer, but she was like screaming all at the same time. I mean, I can't even describe that moment of my life. And the only thing I remember hearing after a few seconds was my dad. And he's like, "Susan, Susan." My mom's name is Susan. And you could tell that he could tell something was really wrong. And so we all met back at my uncle's house. And I mean, I hadn't seen my parents. That was the longest I had ever been away from home. So I hadn't seen my parents in a month. And, I gave him a big hug, and we shed a few tears and said some prayers, and we kind of looked at each other like, what's going on? I mean, it was crazy. So that was Thursday. And then a couple of days later was Saturday, which was the day of the game that, like I mentioned, I wasn't playing in. So we were just at my uncle's house, and his best friend comes over. And this is a critical part of the story. He comes over, and we never met the guy before. His name is Tim. And he introduces himself and walks over to my parents and says, "Bob and Susan, here's my keys. Take my car for as long as you can possibly need it, whatever it takes. I can imagine what you're going through with your son right now. Just have my car for, take him around, doctor's appointments, whatever you need." And they were blown away. And he left. I mean, he was there for maybe 15 minutes and he was gone. And we're like, wow, that was like the most generous thing someone's ever done for us, for our family. So a couple of days go by, and my oncologist, who I had spoken to, had said, "You're enrolled in these classes. You're supposed to start classes next week. I don't want you to drop out of all your classes because, I mean, we're going to be treating you pretty hard here. I'm not sure exactly how, but you got to do something. You can't just wallow in your sorrows." So I went to my first ever college class on Monday. Everything was good. Took Tim's car, drove around, went to some appointments. The next day, I had my second ever college class. This is a Tuesday now. And I came out of the class and I was hungry. So I went to the cafeteria, and I'm sitting there eating a breakfast burrito, watching the news. Now, I don't know if you remember these. Everyone's got flat screen televisions now, but there was a tube television. There was probably all
Yes.
Yeah, right. It's probably all of 8 inches big, wide, and it's sitting in the corner, or not sitting, hanging from a bracket in the corner of the ceiling and the wall. You know, it's people are watching it in this cafeteria here at the school, and the news is on. Now, I don't know the news station or any, it's just whatever news station is on in New York at the time. So I'm sitting there watching the news, and all of a sudden a plane hits one of the twin towers. And I'm like, oh, what a horrible accident. I mean, that's crazy. So I called my dad, and he's back at my uncle's house, and we're watching these, and I'm like, do you see this? And he's like, yeah, I just saw that. This is crazy. And then we're talking, not a minute later, bam, a second plane hits the other twin tower there in Manhattan. And my dad is like, this ain't right. Something's wrong. That was not an accident. So it's September 11th, 2001, and I hop in the car, and I don't even think I finished the burrito. It's probably still sitting there. I hope someone cleaned it up by now. And I drove to my uncle's house. Now, it would typically take me 15 minutes to drive to my uncle's house from school, but it took me 9 hours as I drove in New York. People, fleeing Manhattan. The traffic was incredible. There's burning towers in the distance.
It was horrible.
And it was, that day was just unbelievable. And I listened to the whole thing on the radio, AM radio. Now, I subsequently have a master's degree in broadcast journalism, and I love radio and broadcasting, podcasting like we're doing right now, Chris, but I will never, ever listen to 9 straight hours of AM radio again.
Oh my gosh.
And but it was riveting. And I pulled into my uncle's neighborhood and ran out of gas.
Wow.
And I mean, the fact that I even made it there was amazing, but I ran out of gas, and we had to push my car into his driveway.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So we're pushing the car in the driveway. I'm looking at my parents, and we're like, just a few days ago, I thought potentially my life was over. Now it kind of feels like the world might be over.
Right.
What are we going to do? So my aunt was hysterical because my uncle was on business the night before, and he was supposed to fly home that morning, and he was in Denver though. So finally at like 8 p.m. he calls, and he's like, guys, I can't imagine, you're probably nervous. I'm okay. I'm alive. I know what happened. I just can't believe it happened, but it did. I got stuck here in Denver. They grounded my flight, but I'll try to catch a flight tomorrow, but just wanted to let you know I'm okay, and I'm glad I got through.
Wow.
And my aunt, you could just see the weight, off her shoulders.
Because there were no phone towers. Everything was destroyed at that point. There was you couldn't get to anybody who was living in the city to find out anything was happening at that point. So, wow, they didn't know anything that was happening with him, or he wasn't able to contact them, or they weren't able to contact him.
But both of us.
Okay.
I mean, he didn't know. They were out on Long Island, so he had a pretty good idea that they weren't flying or wouldn't be in Manhattan. So I think he probably thought we were okay, but we had no idea about him. He easily could have been on one of those planes.
Wow. Because
we didn't know at the time where they were coming from. So my aunt was about to hang up, but my uncle was like, wait, before I go, I got to let you know that my friend Tim O'Brien, who you guys met a couple days ago, he was in the tower this morning, and he passed away.
Oh my gosh.
And
oh my gosh.
Wow. It just hit us. We were like, wow. So it turns out, Chris, that Tim worked for an investment bank, Cantor Fitzgerald. So if anyone is familiar with investment banks or that world, Cantor Fitzgerald's been around for many, many years. And it turns out also that Tim was a very, very generous guy, and so is the culture there at Cantor Fitzgerald. And they had hundreds of people in the tower that morning that they all died. And if you've seen the interview, you could probably find it on the internet of their leader shortly after this. His basic words were, I lost everyone. And but Tim was known for being really generous. So the fact that he gave us his car was amazing. But come to find out, a lot of people were not actually surprised that he did that. He participated in acts of radical generosity often. And so all the people in Cantor Fitzgerald passed away. Now, they were also so generous, Cantor Fitzgerald, that they donated office space to my uncle's foundation. He has a foundation for cystic fibrosis, which is a respiratory, reproductive, digestive disorder that my cousin has. And terrible, terrible disease, but they've made great leaps and bounds in awareness and research recently, and some drugs to help patients. But those were the early stages of the foundation there, and Cantor Fitzgerald was critical in offering that office space to them for many, many years.
Wow.
And luckily, no one from the foundation was typically in the office that early, except for Tammy, who was uncharacteristically late that morning. Tammy's a wonderful woman and done great work for the foundation over the years. And she was, for silly reasons, was late that morning and was frustrated at the time and got stuck in the subway that morning. And she ended up escaping. You know, she's alive, and her story, I mean, you thought my story is interesting. Her story is about being there on ground zero when it all happened is incredible. But she got out and, you know, safely. And you know, she's the stories that she tells are amazing. But thankfully, Tammy made it. But unfortunately, you know, the gentleman that executed the most generous thing ever for our family passed away. And I think about this time in my life just every day, no exaggeration. Every day I think about this period of time, and I'm always reminded that we don't really know how much time we have on this earth.
All right,
and our
speak on it. You're right. Go ahead. Sorry.
Our opportunity to be generous. No worries. Our opportunity to be generous are limited. Our opportunities are limited. And so I believe that you mentioned in the intro, I do believe that everyone has gifts and skills and resources to make someone else's world better. And you don't know how much time you have to do that. And it could be a car. It could be opening a door. It could be a hug. It could be $1 million if you're rich. It could be 50 cents if if you have more modest means. But just the giving mindset is so important to me. And I learned that lesson from Tim, even though I only spoke with the guy. I barely even spoke with him, and I was 18. I don't even think I said anything other than nice to meet you.
But his action put everything in motion for you to see what he had done at that point. You know, wow.
Absolutely. So you asked about my story. I had to share that because from that moment on, when I was 18, that shaped that was the catalyst. My general view. My general view of the world, and I believe that generosity is a powerful force. I also believe it's contagious, and since then I've done more research and I have more scientific evidence, and not just my own personal story. But since then, I've always felt that, and it's taken a long time to flesh that out. I mean, to understand what that truly means. It wasn't like suddenly at 18 I was this giving person. You know, it took time, but since then I try in my professional life and in my personal life to model that, and so. Since then, I graduated. I mentioned I moved back to. I didn't mention. I mentioned I went to grad school for broadcast journalism. It was too cold in New York. I moved back to South Florida for grad school after I graduated. So I did end up graduating, and took a job. Worked in radio for a while. Loved it, but got recruited into the financial industry, and I worked at a big company. Loved working there for many, many years. They have an excellent mission. They're a very generous company themselves. And after about 12 years or so, my business partner and I decided to leave there. And we are almost 2 years now into owning our own firm. And you mentioned it in the opening too. Our firm is called Initiate Impact. And we're a wealth management firm focused on generosity, in large part due to Tim O'Brien and his generous act in my life when I was 18.
Wow. Isn't it something? Like, this is that spiritual design. And, just like one moment in our life connects so many things about where we are today and where we've gotten ourselves to today. I love that. Can you tell us what is radical generosity?
So radical, let's start with the word radical. We've talked about generosity a bit, but radical is doing something or having characteristics that are almost unexplainable or might be considered unwise or inadvisable by other people. So you can do a lot of things radically, and not everything should be done radically. Some things should be more conservative, but generosity, I believe, should be done, at least in part or at times, be done radically, because if you do it with expectation to get something in return, or if it's overcalculated, or if you think you have to, if it's a no-brainer to do something, ultimately, I'm going to challenge people here. It may actually not be that generous. If there's a requirement or everyone else is doing it, then how generous is it actually? Is it more of just an obligation? And so radical generosity means to me doing things like giving someone your car. Uh, some people in Tim's life would probably think he's nuts. In fact, if you talk to his wife, who, God bless her and everything that she had to go through during that period of time, she probably looked at him that day and said, well, Tim, what did you do? I mean, how are you going to get around?
No, she was probably like, here you go again. She was like, here you go again.
Exactly. Here you go again, honey. Giving stuff away.
Yes.
And so yeah, radical generosity. And like I said, it's not necessarily possessions. I've taken some trips overseas to do some service work for people that have inadequate housing. And some people looked at me and said, like, you're nuts for going over there and doing that. And it's a work in progress in my life. I'm not always the most generous person, but I try to be, and I try to make it a mindset. So radical generosity to me are the things that we can do that are above and beyond expectation, to be kind and compassionate to other people.
Nice. I hadn't heard of it put like that. Radical generosity, And it's like Oprah's in the audience. You get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car. You know what I mean? Like that. That's on that level of feeling like, so larger than just regular, being larger than regular generosity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll give you an example. Like I said, it's not necessarily the volume or the amount of money, or it's what's radical in that given moment. So like, for example, I saw a gentleman, I think it was a Walmart, maybe it was a Target, I can't remember. And there's a guy who, something was wrong with the door. Like the person couldn't get through the door. And this guy, like there's 100 people, it seemed like, walking, myself included, like I'm guilty of this. This poor lady could not get through the door. And there's all these different kind of people walking up, parking, like there's just a billion people around. And this guy is carrying a bunch of stuff. And instead of him just saying, well, someone else who's just walking and doesn't have, like, their hands are free, can easily help this lady. And why would I do it if I'm carrying a bunch of stuff and I'm fumbling through? He puts the stuff down, like practically in the middle of the road or the street, turns around, comes back and helps this lady. And to me, that was radical generosity, because like, if I was that guy, I probably would have just kept walking and expected someone else to help this poor lady.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be Oprah giving a car, although that is a great example, right? And this guy, who knows? I mean, maybe he was super financially wealthy. I don't know, but I got the feeling he wasn't that type of dude. That what he did was something beyond for him.
Yeah, well, I mean, the fact that he stopped what he was doing to go and help somebody, a stranger, that's huge.
He stopped what he was doing and had to put he easily could have continued carrying all this junk. That's probably the wrong word. Whatever item. It wasn't junk. It was stuff that he just bought from the store.
Okay, so it wasn't junk. Yeah, it wasn't junk.
Yeah, like he put
his new stuff. He put his new stuff on the ground, right?
Yeah, it could have been it could have been food. It could have been new clothes. It could have been his wife.
I love it. This man is somewhere. Yes, but it's paying it forward. It's just being kind, just being, we're human people, and someone is struggling and you can help them, then you should just help them. It's the logic makes such sense, but we've pushed ourselves past that. Our society, so many things have pushed past the general generosity. So you're right, to see someone do something like that, that is a radical generosity example. I love it. Thank you for the example as well. I'm sure the listeners as well will want to be like, what's the radical? How does that? So that's perfect. Nice.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay, let me ask you, how can we use technology for good? Technology in general, I guess, depending on the time period that you have been born in, people love it. They understand it. They are addicted to it. Depending if you're not from the time period of technology or where it's so advanced, maybe now it's a struggle for people to really connect with that. So I'm interested to see, how can we use technology for good?
I believe technology is a powerful force, and some people maybe didn't grow up in the technology era, can bash technology a little bit, like, well, the good old days, let's go back to
the rotary phone. Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, right. and the tube television that I saw that I was talking about earlier. I don't see it that way. I did quite a bit of research for my book. I wrote a book about technology and social media and how those things affect our money decisions. And so I mentioned I work in the financial space. And so in my research for this book, I learned so much about technology. I expected to just brain dump essentially all my knowledge. I'm using air quotes here if you could see me. All my
We can't, but we get it. We there.
It was my arrogant ego. Maybe it was similar to the ego I had when I was 18, thought I was invincible, but I thought I was just going to dump all this knowledge into a book about finance. And I ended up doing a lot of research on psychology and technology. And I learned so much about this. I got some great advice from a mentor of mine, a gentleman that helps people write books. And he said, it's not about what you know, it's about what you want to know. So essentially, curiosity is what good authors and good creative people have. And so when you talk about technology for good, I realized that technology can be used for bad things. I mean, it can be used for hacking. It can be used for bashing people, negativity, complaining. There's a lot of things out there on the internet if you're on social media, or there's even some podcasts that you might say that have a pretty negative effect. But there's also some that are super positive, like Glass Half Full.
Yes.
There you go.
Sorry, I had to touch it. I had to touch the button. Sorry. Yes, but continue.
Yeah, so I believe it can be used for good. And so the focus of the book is how to use it good for your financial life.
Yes.
Or at least that was my intention. And there's a lot of details in there if anyone's interested. Absolutely. I'm sure I'm going to promote my own book, but
of course,
there's also other reasons that that technology can be used for good as well. It can be a healthy tool. It doesn't just have to be the thing that parents want to take away from their kids because they're on the iPad too much. There's too much tech time, young man or young lady. It can be used for good things, like for example, taking it to the financial world. There's a lot of great tools out there that can help you with your budgeting and investing and help you stay accountable to making wise financial decisions. There's tools out there talking about psychology that can help you connect better with other people, help you connect better with yourself, help you understand your psychology more to have better mental health. There's just a lot of tools out there. And what I have found is that the problem is the distraction. It used to be where information was scarce. If you weren't an expert, you had to go find it.
True.
I tell a story in the book about this Encyclopedia Britannica that I used to have in my house.
Oh my gosh. Did you guys have the whole set?
Oh, bro, we had the whole set.
And now, let me ask you, where are they now? Where are they now?
They must be in it. I have no clue.
This is everybody's thing. Nobody knows where they are now. I asked, oh, did you have the set? Yeah, where are they? They're like, I don't know where they are.
No clue.
Nobody has the set. Okay, you guys had the set. I love it.
Yeah, so we had the set. It was red. That was my favorite color. That was the only thing I liked about the encyclopedia. But I don't know where it is. But information was hard to get, right? So then the internet comes along, and all of a sudden, information was easy. And you could find everything, and it was terrific. Then somewhere in the past 10 or 15 years, information has been too easy to get, or, I don't want to, some people might consider it too easy to get. So what has happened is now the challenge is not finding the information. The challenge is prioritizing.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's prioritizing.
Yes.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Sifting through it. So technology hasn't suddenly become bad. It has just become a potential distraction for people because instead of struggling to find one solution to a problem, you find 10 and then you never execute. So if you are able to prioritize and you can use technology in a positive fashion, I think it's still an excellent tool in our life. I mean, I think about it in my professional life. When we started our business, I mentioned this almost 2 years ago now, I fell into that first category of distraction. I mean, I had so many different pieces of software because I thought we were going to be so productive and add this amazing value to the people we serve. And I realized it's not about 15 different pieces of software. It's about identifying the first couple. And now what I'm seeing, Chris, to kind of wrap it in, to tie a bow on this point, is that now there's actually technology. There are tools out there that will help you do the prioritization. There are things you can use, or there are people out there that will help you identify the pieces of software that are most important to you. So instead of going into Best Buy, for example, this is related to hardware, instead of going into Best Buy and seeing 7,000 computers, right, and spending umpteen hours in there doing research, and then, now you can easily you can identify the one or two that you want to look at, and so go into that decision-making process without subjecting yourself to decision fatigue and having, too many different options. Just go in there and say, all right, I got to make my decision on these one or two. And you can do that with technology. I mean, you can do that with computers. Like I said, you could do that with you're hiring your lawn care guy or doctors. Like, instead of distracting yourself with too many things, use technology for good. And so I found that out in my research, and there's plenty of books and other pieces of information and sources that I did research on that I can recommend. I don't know if you have show notes, you can put them in there, but I can recommend resources for people.
Yes, we always like resources. Yes, please.
Awesome.
Because, a lot of people say stuff, and at the end, folks are like, okay, I don't really remember what was said. I know some key points. Where can I go to get the information? So the resources are everything, definitely awesome. Where people can go and find it. I love that.
Okay. Cool. So I'll give you a couple books to read. The one is there's an author by the name of Shelley Turkle, and she wrote Alone Together. If you're interested in learning about, and the book is actually, it might be 10, 12 years old now, but it still holds up. If you're interested in learning about modern technology and how it affects the mind and how it affects people and how they live their life, that gets kind of a general overview, fascinating one. If you're interested in learning more about the social media aspect of things, there's an author by the name of Sinan Arnal, and there's another author by the name of there's one called Adam Alter. And each of them have a couple different books about it, and you can read about social media. And it's almost a little bit scary, the beginning of those books, because the science behind it and how the algorithms and how social media and the different tools and the internet affect how you make decisions. Those are two good. So Sinan Arnal and Adam Alter have a couple different books about that. So check out those guys. Awesome. And then finally, there's one more. And this is a pretty popular book, it's been the #1 bestseller, but I don't know if your listeners have ever heard of Atomic Habits by James Clear. And that book is really interesting because that book will help you kick some bad habits and develop some positive habits to actually execute on all the things you learned from the other book. So it's not a book designed specifically around technology, but I found it highly relevant to what I was writing about, because the tools and suggestions that James has will help you implement the good habits to use around technology that are suggested by Sinan and Adam and Shelley in their text. So I got others, but those are the first four that come to mind, because they kind of those four people weren't writing books to help each other, but they ended up really being super relevant. It's almost like they were part of a series, but it was good.
Without knowing it, right?
Yep.
Awesome.
And they each have there's podcasts out there too that Sinan and James do also. So you could probably find, if you're more of a listener because you're a podcast person, you could probably find plenty of details, or even the audiobook version. I'm an audiobook guy.
I love an audiobook because I like to move around. It's in today's times, you got, I don't know about anybody else, but I try to use my time wisely. So if I can do something while listening to something else, it works out so perfectly. On the move, I'm traveling here in public transportation, subways and trains. And so always on the move, the audiobook is great. People here are walking with a book up the stairs reading. I don't know how it's possible, but they're doing it here. They're doing it. So let me ask you, I want to change a little bit. I want to know who's around you that keeps you motivated.
Well, the number one person is my wife. She is, one of those resilient people. She's a kindergarten teacher.
Oh my gosh, that says everything. Lord, her patience. Bless her heart.
Oh man, tell me about it. So I always make the joke, but you kind of already made it. The reason why she married me is because she's extremely patient.
Oh.
I'm not an easy guy to live with, man. Like I I believe in generosity. I love supporting other people. But
I was saying, what about the generosity? You know, I was coming with it. Like, what's going on with the generosity at home? Okay, go ahead.
Well, you know how they say like sometimes your weaknesses can become your strengths. You know, I believe that. I mean, I wasn't naturally greedy person per se, but I didn't probably consider others before myself at, you know, those early stages of life. And so maybe that's because I was an only child, but I say this because my wife she's a very, very patient person. And not only with just my mental state, but also with my medical history and other things that have gone on. She's just a very, very caring person, but she motivates me because she truly believes this. She believes that the kid, you know, like that young people are what are going to move society and the world forward. Right. And she pours into them. You know, she doesn't do the job for the money.
Well, no teacher who's a real teacher does. That's for sure.
No, she doesn't do it for the money. She doesn't do it for the fame by any means. But I'll tell you what, she's adaptive. And the reason why I say that is because this is not a plug for her, but well, it kind of is. But
well, she's your wife. You better plug her. She gonna hear this too. Yeah. You better.
You're right. You're right. Slap me, man.
Like, yeah, look, let me let you know. She over here like, what?
So, well, I say this because about 6 months or so ago. Well, let me take a step back. About a few years ago, before the pandemic, she was invited to speak at a conference because I think her social studies lesson, she calls them passport adventures. We love to travel, and she loves to teach the kids about the world and other cultures.
That's awesome.
And so she got asked to speak at a conference, and she was kind of nervous, a little bit of imposter syndrome type of like, this is not me. I just want to be in the classroom working with my kids, and that's it. I don't need recognition. And I was like, honey, it's not about recognition. This is about hard work that you've put in for at least a decade now. You can provide some real value.
Yes.
And you believe, you know, I was like, you believe that these kids can provide value to the world and you respect them so much. It's time that you give yourself a little bit of respect too. So she did this conference and it went tremendously, and people were asking her for we want your lessons, like teach us how to do. So you ask who motivates me, and she motivates me because she, you know, a decade plus of teaching, you know, 15 years now, she's been in the classroom.
I love it.
But at that point, she went a decade of teaching. And then about 6 months ago, she decided to purchase the domain name mrsdepasquale.com and start selling her lessons. And she took that leap and she motivated herself to become an entrepreneur in her own right.
Yes.
So she comes from a long line of teachers and pastors and just education, you know, oriented type of people. But no one was an entrepreneur, and she's the first in her family, as far as I know. So that's super motivational for me.
Wow.
And then one other person I want to mention, I did mention my cousin who suffers from cystic fibrosis. He was on the 21st episode of my podcast, and he wasn't expected to live past, you know, maybe 10 years old when he was born.
Wow.
He's now 30. Let's see, he's probably 32, 33. And the part of the reason why I'm flying up to New York, like I mentioned, is that I haven't met his first child yet. And he now is married and has a baby. So,
congratulations.
Yeah, awesome stuff. So anyway, there you go. Those are the two people that I come to mind about when I talk about motivation.
I love that. What's your wife's name?
Her name is Trisha.
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 You know what, Trisha? This is for you, love. That's for you. That is for you, because I am a teacher as well, and it is not an easy job. And, you know, just to hear how long she's been doing and the fact that she cares so much, and yeah, and you know, this is the type of thing, it's her gift. And so just like she's sharing it with the kids, she should share it with others, other teachers, other people, to understand this is how we should be caring in the classroom. You know, it's not something to feel that she could keep to herself, you know, but I hope after this that she'll do more conferences and begin to share. I love that she's starting home business, that people can take away these lessons and things. And, you know, learning is forever. Like, we're never too old to learn. And so the fact that she's inspiring these young people of today, they are going to be taking over tomorrow. They are the important ones. We are how we are, you know. So my youngest niece is 8 years old. So these young kids, 5, 6, all the way, you know, they're the ones who are going to be running the world. So what type of example are we setting for them? Or what type of tools are we giving them to be able to be used? So I love it. I love it. Nice job. Oh, y'all are a duo. Y'all a duo team. I love it.
We're
Bob and
trying,
Trisha.
brother.
Yeah. That's
We're
great.
trying.
You need to have someone in your corner, because there are days when you come in and you just don't have it, and someone to lean on and to be able to bounce off. We can grow together. And I love that. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Awesome.
If
I'm
you
going to
could,
pass on your message to her.
oh yeah, look, you tell her to listen so she can hear it in real time. Well, it'll be recorded time, but yeah, tell her to go ahead on and listen. But yes, please pass it on for her to keep on doing what she's doing, to just keep on doing. I wanted to ask you if you could purchase anything intangible besides health, happiness, or love, what would you buy, Bob?
Oh, purchase something non-tangible. I would say if I could purchase healthy relationships.
Ooh.
And I say that not because I don't have any healthy relationships, but going back, there have been times where I haven't had them, and I know how valuable they are. And I think there's something to be said for the time that it takes to develop a relationship. But after the research that I did for my book, and like I said, it totally went off in another direction than I expected it, but I was so curious. It really comes down to that in life. Relationships are the ultimate fuel for fulfillment and joy. And I think they're very, very, not I think, I know, the data suggests that relationships are more important than any possession or any amount of money. And the relationships that I'm talking about are primarily interpersonal relationships, but also with the other things in your life. I know so many people, having worked with literally thousands of families over the years on their personal finances, the ones who were the most successful or felt themselves to be the most successful, it was completely uncorrelated to the amount of money they had, but it was directly correlated to the relationship they had with their money. And so when I say healthy relationships, it could be with money. It could be with possessions, could be with your house, could be spiritual relations, could be with your God if you're a spiritual person.
Yeah, speak on it, Bob. You touching on some toes right there. Yes. Yes, break it down. You're right. It's a variety of relationships.
Yes, sir. So I'm all about it. It's so important. And I believe strongly that relationships are vitally important in our life. And there's a lot of people I think could benefit from some healthier relationships with different things in their life and different people.
Yes. And, a healthy relationship, like you say, it doesn't have to be with people. It can be with things. And I think just learning how to develop a healthy relationship, sometimes that system sometimes isn't played out for us. And that's something you learn at home. But if the people at home haven't been taught that, then, this system is broken. So sometimes just learning how to be able to have a healthy relationship and what does that consist of and what does that look like, so I agree. Having that is really important. It's really, really important. What do you do to maintain good mental health? Do you have any daily regiment? Is there something that you do every day or once in a while for yourself?
Yes. Three things come to mind. Number one is every morning I wake up and I have a very short period of what I call gratitude time. This is essential because, like I mentioned, I could easily have not been here after I was 18. And so I try to take every morning, and unless I'm away from home on one of these trips I go on, and my routine is totally off. I wake up, and before I do anything in the morning, I just thank God for life, like that I'm even alive, because I couldn't have it. And that it. 30 seconds, minute in the morning, I'm telling you, is so powerful in my life. So that really helps me find perspective. So no matter what happens during the day, I'm grateful that I'm here to even experience whatever that is.
I love that.
So that's number one. Number two, and this is not necessarily in any order, per se, but number two would be physical exercise. I loved, believe it or not, I love to exercise, and it has something to do with maybe my athletic background, or maybe because it's kind of a mental thing. Like cancer couldn't take me down, so I'm kind of still fighting it.
Yeah,
all in
you
my
healed from
mind.
cancer. We didn't even find out. I mean, you're here, so we. Yeah,
didn't
the
even get into
cancer
that,
story
but-
was cut by this 9/11. We didn't even touch it. So
We
okay,
can get back into that, but yeah. So I like to physically exercise, and believe me, that is probably the biggest chance for me to de-stress mentally.
Me
Because
too.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, at my job, I running a business, and in the industry that I'm in, it can be very, very stressful. And so that hour or two in the morning is and I do that pretty much directly after my gratitude time. So it all kind of fits together. And then the other thing is, I'll mention my wife again. I mean, we spend a lot of time together. We don't have any children because of my medical history. We've been way more intentional in the past couple of years, since the pandemic, of specifically spending time together.
I love that.
We have a relationship built on faith, so we spent time praying together like
Yes.
consistently over the years. But the last 2 years, I'd say, not that prayer is not good. That's vitally important. I have another story about that, actually, about how she supported me, but when I was ill. But actually, just spending some time together, like whoever your significant other is, if you have one, or if you're not in a relationship, maybe if you just have a friend, but just taking time to verbalize your thoughts is like so powerful. So for my mental health, even if it's 15 minutes, just, hey honey, how'd your day go? This is what was bad. This is what was good. Like that's golden to me. It's like therapy in the family. It's tremendous.
Nice. Oh, Bob, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Just checking.
I got you.
Okay, just want to be sure. Good. No, I think that's awesome. Having time to be able to be together and just to have that moment. And I love the praying together. I think that is powerful. That is powerful that you guys were on the same accord, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, so many things the harmony in the house is different. The energy, pass with each other is, that's important. So that was really awesome to hear. Definitely.
Yeah. So
please go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I got to. I don't know how much time we got, but I can tell you a quick story about prayer and why it's
yes.
important.
Tell us. It's your time, Bob.
Right.
It's your time.
Well, it hit me, and I was like, oh, I got to tell him this one.
Yes.
So
share it.
So my wife and I, our relationship was long distance, to start, when we were dating. And so we would spend quite a bit of time talking to each other on the phone. Thank God for free minutes after 9:00. And if you remember those days.
Yes.
So my wife has a funny story about going to the AT&T office and the guy looking at her account, be like, oh my good, like, how do you he was like, there's something wrong with the computer. There's no way you've been on the phone that much. And he's like, it's all free because after 9 anyway. But so we would spend a lot of time on the phone. Well, one day we were kind of going through our, like, I don't know, we got to college and like, what was it like? Because we didn't meet, we met each other when I was 20, she was 20, I think, and I was 22. And so we're talking, and she's telling me a little bit about her high school, and she had this teacher. May he rest in peace. He passed unexpectedly a few months ago, actually. So it's kind of sad, but he was this amazing guy. He was kind of quirky, but everyone loved him. His name was Mr. Zill. Everyone was like, thought Mr. Zill was the crazy guy, but he was a good teacher, and everyone loved him. So my wife's junior year of high school, she had Mr. Zill in her fall semester, and he said one of the first days of class, he's like, all right, boys and girls, or what we're going to do is this semester, periodically, we're going to pray for our future spouse.
Wow.
And everyone in the class is like, they're like 15, 16 years old. They're like, what? Like, you're nuts. Like, I'm not even, I can't even blow my nose and study for my homework, and you want me to be thinking about getting married? And So it was like totally foreign concept to them. So periodically, though, throughout the semester, they would take a couple minutes and they would, say some prayers to themselves, I guess, for their future spouses. And so my wife was telling me this, and we were kind of thinking, like, I was like, oh, that's crazy. And she was like, well, what was, where were you? Like, what was going on? And so we did the math. I'm about a year and a half older than her, 2 grades though, older than her. And so when I was a freshman in college, going through my treatments is when that she was praying for her future spouse.
Hmm.
And it just like there's dead silence on the phone. I was like, oh my goodness, that's crazy.
Wow.
Like, what are the chances of that? So yeah, the power of prayer is amazing, man. Like that,
Sure
she had no idea who I was, had never never, wasn't even thinking about who I could possibly be. But she was supporting me one way or another while I was going through all of my treatments.
Wow.
And so
my mouth is on the floor now, Bob. My jaw is on the ground now. Wow.
So yeah, I mean, prayer is pretty important for us. So
wow, I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, wow, that was great. That was great. Ooh, yeah, it is powerful. It is powerful.
Yes.
I want to ask,
sure.
What have you found to be the commonality with families or households and their personal finances?
Well, I think a lot of families these days aren't open enough about finance within the family.
Mm.
I think that's really important. You talk about mental health. The number one cause of divorce, I believe, is still financial struggle in the world, even more than infidelity, I believe.
Wow.
And there's a lot of couples that aren't open with each other about finances. And then talk about children. I think at least over here and on this side of the world, the financial education and literacy for young people is severely lacking. And I think part of that is because it needs to be talked about in the home more. So you talk about commonalities. I think it's pretty common for finance to be a taboo topic.
Wow.
I talk about, like, what are the things that you don't talk about in the family? When you're growing up, it's like, you don't talk about sex, you don't talk about money. There's a couple other taboo topics, and I don't think money should be one of those. I think money should be talked about. I'm not saying that parents need to tell their kids every last dollar and talk about taxes and, how much money they make specifically, but they need to teach them about it. And then one other thing that I think is really important is that the families that I feel like have the best relationship with money and the most successful, and like I said, not the definition, not being amount of money, but relationship with it. Usually one, because their skill set or they desire to do that, but the other spouse is not clueless as to what's going on. The other spouse or the other member of the couple just understands everything, knows how things work. They just don't provide, they do the daily tasks of, balancing the checkbook or paying bills or whatever it might be. And so my suggestion or really plea is that for families be open, make sure that all responsible adults in the house understand what's going on, and God forbid something happens. I mean, I've seen it before, Chris. Something happens, either death or incapacitation by one spouse, and the remaining spouse is not only dealing with the emotional aspects of a sick or dead dead partner, but now they have to handle all the finances that they have no idea what's going on. So make sure you at least understand the basics of the family finances.
Wow, that's good. That's good advice. Definitely. So, I get it. It's not something that a lot of people talk about. Even here in this country, a lot of husbands and wives don't even know if the wife is not working, then the housewife is a real position in Japan. Like, they are doing everything. They're paying all the bills. They're cooking the food. It's a real job. But otherwise, some couples who are both working, some of them don't know each other's finances, and that's weird. How can we really, build up the house together if we don't know how much is coming in and what's going out, and they just always feel like, oh, well, they have their money, or I pay for this and they pay for that, but there's still no common understanding about the money that's coming in the house. What do we have to play around with? What do we have? It's like, what do you have and what do I have? You know, and then we pay for this
Oh,
together type thing.
yeah. And I mean, my suggestion, especially for a newlywed young couple starting their life together, is to, their finances should be as of one household. But I also understand that, sometimes there's second and multiple marriages. There's other situations. There's international. I mean, think about it. I mean, you're in Japan right now. I mean, you can meet people from all over the world. So I'm not, in certain situations, they're going to have to be, multiple accounts and things, but you got to at least understand what's going on in case of emergency. I mean, that's so critical.
No, it's true. I agree. Most definitely. Yeah. I wanted to ask, are you living in your purpose?
I believe so. And I probably, a couple of years ago, I may not have said yes to that, but more recently,
changed?
Absolutely. Well, what's changed is now I feel like I'm not only understanding what I think is important in the world in my life, but I'm living it out. I'm executing it. Like you talked about living my purpose. So for 12 or so years, like I said, I was working for an organization that I loved working for. I loved the people. I didn't feel like I was in a bad situation. But it got to a point where people were asking us to provide some additional services and related to generosity and helping them live that out themselves. And I felt like my gifts and skills were better lent spending more time on that and less time on some of the still important, but maybe not as important tasks like, investment management and working people's with their insurance and calculating retirement projections. All those things are very, very important. I don't want to skip over them. But I wanted to spend more time and felt like I was designed to spend more time on helping people identify the most important causes to them and supporting them, whether that's financially or with their sweat equity or other resources. So now that I'm doing that, it's great. And Chris, I have started getting back out on some stages, speaking to groups and organizations about the power of generosity and how a generous mindset is good business. It's not just, for us all to be happy. It's also really, really good for your company and your employees to be involved in a generous culture. And so, yeah, I mean, now that I'm, I mentioned my broadcasting and communication roots. I mean, I really miss that stuff and addressing people. So anyway, if you want to hear about generosity and your team and your organization, I'm your guy, because I love talking about it and it's definitely my purpose.
Yes. Now that is a grand and great answer. Definitely. Yes. And ideally with you, maybe we might even see you on a TED Talk or something. We might see you up there on there. Have you done any TED Talks?
No, but I've been asked and taught, and suggested, and I'm thinking about it. Applying for there's a TED here not too far from where I live, a TEDx that has it. So I could apply there, but I'm willing to go anywhere too, though. I think everywhere needs to hear it. So yeah, I if you want to give me an endorsement, man, can I do like TEDx? Where in Japan are you?
I'm in Tokyo.
Oh man, they got to have TEDx Tokyo.
Yes, they do. So, they do. I think they do. Let me not quote that out. I don't want to be lying on the air. But yeah, maybe they might. I'm happy where I am at this point. You guys really are out there doing, sharing your advice and all of that. So I'm happy to promote you all. I do a lot in my regular life. So this is where I get a chance to just share what other people are doing. And it's nice. It's nice to have the break.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I'm sure you got a lot. I'm sure what I like to call an impact maker yourself.
Thank you.
The fact that you I can just tell it, the fact that you take the time to do a show like this and support other people's mission and what they're doing, that means that you have a strong sense of purpose yourself. It's might be counterintuitive, but I believe that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, I believe it as well too, Bob. I believe it as well too. I enjoy what I do. It's a blessing. It's, I'm so blessed by what you're sharing for other listeners. It's for me as well. From every guest that I have spoken with, I've learned a few things from. And I never expected that when I started this journey. I just felt like, I'm going to have a platform and I'm going to share. I didn't expect to be on the learning side, and such a wonderful treat. so that, people like yourself can come on and just drop these nuggets of information and, that we can just shift and change our lives or add something else exciting into our life. For sure. We love it.
Yeah.
We love it.
Awesome.
I like to ask all my guests this final question. Is your glass half empty or half full?
My glass is so I'm gonna go off the board here.
You go.
My glass is half empty, and the reason why I say that is not because I feel unfilled and negative, and I don't feel like I'm capable. I feel like I got a lot left to do. I'm in the middle of my life. I feel like the half of the glass that is full has been awesome. It's been uplifting. It's been tremendous. It's been quite a blessing, and so. But I also feel like I have there's still some more work to be done. There's still some purpose to be lived.
All right. Nothing wrong with, there's no wrong answer. There's no,
Right.
there is no wrong answer at all. It is about what you feel for yourself. So I love that. Awesome. Can I ask you, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, I would say this. We've talked about generosity. We've talked about finances. We've talked about, some grief and loss type of stuff. I would say this: if you don't enjoy the journey, the destination will be even worse. Ooh. And what I mean by that is that the stuff that you do in your daily life, you got to make sure that those things are fulfilling some sort of purpose. There's going to be ups and downs, and you can't expect every moment to be happy. But if you operate with a sense of joy that, you're putting good stuff out into the world, the work that you do, whether that's task-driven work or it's innovative work, whatever it is, enjoy the journey, because if you don't, you're going to eventually get to a destination that's not desirable. But as long as you're enjoying what you're doing along the way, you can look back one day and say, you know what? I lived my purpose.
I love it. You better speak, Bob. Yes. I love it. 8 something in the morning. You better talk. I'm scared of you at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This is how you in the morning? I'm scared for you in the afternoon. Wow. I love it. Thank you so much for just being here, for taking some time out, number one, just to come on and to share with us, share the things that you know, and just to give us a sense of smiling and add on to our purpose, and that people can see that everyday people can find their purpose and find their joy in life and do and share back and give back to the world. That's huge. Just paying it forward. We appreciate you. We thank you for your time today. And we hope that we will see you again, maybe.
Hey, I hope so, brother. Listen, you keep it up with the work you're doing. Keep the glass half full. And, I'll tell you what, I think we all have an opportunity to do in this world today, speaking of technology, all these great things. Like, it's so cool that we can broadcast, we can put out a positive message. Yes. So keep doing it. Hope to talk to you down the road. And I'll tell you this, I wish you a generous rest of your day.
Oh, wait, but before we go, can you tell everybody, how can we reach you? How can we find out more about Bob?
Oh, sure. You don't want to miss that.
Yeah, no, look, come on. This is key bread information right here.
You can find everything about me. You can find my social handles, everything at bobdepasquale.com. If you want more about the business that we talked about a little bit earlier, that's initiateimpact.com.
Excellent. And from there, you can find all the other little links and things that you're posting as well.
Yes, podcast, book, everything's all on bobdepasquale.com.
I love it. You sound busy as well. So that's awesome.
Good busy.
Yes, good. That's what I say too, Bob. That's what I say. That's my thing. Good busy. Anybody who knows me, that's my thing. Yes. Well, thank you so much for being a guest here. You have a grand and great morning. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Have a good night.
Thank you. And thank you to all our listeners listening in to another episode of Glass Half Full, a podcast and a safe platform for everyone to share their life experiences. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Levens. Please subscribe, follow, and rate this podcast on Apple Music, and Spotify for more learning experiences. Until next time, know you are blessed. See ya!